our guest is here, and he's enduring a thunderstorm, I hear, down south. Pete Quinones, how you doing, bro?
Doing good. Yeah, it's just typical Alabama weather where everything's fine. And then all of a sudden, thunder is shaking the house. And I have a standby generator, which is great, but I'm also on Starlink. So if the cloud cover becomes too bad, you know what happens.
Well, uh, you get all fuzzy, and then you blur it out, and then you go down to low quality, and then we get you audio only, and then you cut out, and then you come
Well, and
back.
and then people start commenting in the chat that Mossad gets you or somebody. Yeah, some
Ooh,
Mossad got him. Okay, so yeah.
they might be controlling the weather too. We don't know. They have the. If you search Amazon for Jewish space lasers, you can buy a patch, as I did, and a T-shirt. It funds anti hate speech. Like it gets the hate speech off the internet, Pete. And so I was proud to fund that project. I don't know who came up with it, but it's a clever project that they have out there. I bought it because Amazon showed it to me after I bought the Michael Rothschild book, 200 Years of Conspiracy Theories about the Rothschild family. And then Amazon was like, you need to know about the Jewish space laser patches and shirts. And I also saw, I think it was Maynard from Tool. He wore it on the Joe Rogan show afterwards. So it's like a popular thing out there. But stay away from the space lasers and the weather control, and you're okay. So, other than enduring the storms, what have you been up to?
Oh, just working. Summer, so watching the wife bring food in from the backyard and process it and put it in the deep freeze and yeah, that's
What do you have to
pretty
do to
much
process it? Do you freeze it? You can it? What's going on?
at this point we're just freezing it, just
Okay.
putting it in bags and putting it in the deep freeze. So, you know, during the winter we'll have don't have to make as many trips to the store.
You've recently upped your game with your self-reliance homesteading lifestyle. You're in a much more friendly place to those sort of ideas. People with pro tips to share with you. What have you learned in the past couple of years while you're becoming more self-reliant and less tolerant of the state?
Well, I mean, probably just that there are still people in this world who are living off the land. That there are people, and they're not, you wouldn't even call them preppers. You wouldn't call them, they're not people who even have the same concerns that you or I may have. It's just the way they've always done it. And they're very open to share with you. And if they have a chicken house, you'll never have to buy eggs. And if they have some cattle, someone might show up at your door with a hand, with a basket full of meat. And yeah, so mostly what I found is that that spirit isn't gone. There are still people out here who that's just the way they live, and being around those people, I feel like it helps helps me to be better. It helps me to be even a better person because it's just the way I want to live. I don't want to have to rely upon the pedophiles and cannibals that are in charge.
Well, I think you're in an area of the world where they might say they're slow on the uptake, but really that being slow on the uptake of the rising tide of technocracy is a good thing. And they never lost those skills. They never became dependent on microwaves and instant food and all this other nonsense that the people like in the North and East and the West Coast, corporate world, latchkey kids, all that sort of stuff had to become dependent on. So I think you're in one of the healthier parts of the country, and they've been healthy the whole time because they haven't subjected themselves to a bunch of toxic chemicals and preservatives and a bunch of nonsense. So,
Yeah, this is a pretty native part of the world. I mean, not 175 years ago, it was all Creek Indians right here. So, it's a place where people still understand what the land is. Now, I was reading a book recently, the Spanish Borderlands by oh God, I can't remember what his name is, but it's written in the 20s, and I found out that like Hernando de Soto um, visited the mountain. His people came to the mountain that's right over here, Chiha Mountain,
hmm.
and yeah, yeah, this is a pretty special place.
Well, you mentioned DeSoto. You get into a lot of deep history books. What have you been reading lately?
I'm
See,
reading
deep questions. Yeah, there you go.
Victor Suvorov's Icebreaker.
What's that about?
That is about Suvorov was a defector who went to England from the Soviet Union in 1978, and it's him laying out all the evidence as being a former intelligence in Soviet Russia that Stalin was lined up on the border, ready to invade when Operation Barbarossa kicked off, which basically reverses the whole theory that Hitler was bloodthirsty and warmongery and just wanted to invade Russia and go into the Eastern Front to kill people and genocide. And
Yeah,
it lays
because
out, you know,
Stalin was by the numbers, bloodthirsty, you know, tyrant, like tens and tens and tens of millions. So I think there's a lot that's been washed over because the people who created the USSR also were instrumental in creating like the Federal Reserve, and they play both ends against the middle. So
sure.
I'm not familiar with that, but it does make sense from the other contextual knowledge I know adjacent to that. Why did you start reading that book? Was it someone tipped you off to it? You found
Yeah,
it
I
from
was
another book you were reading? How'd it work?
Yeah, the Myth of the 20th Century podcast is doing, they're reviewing the BBC documentary, The World at War from the early 70s.
Sure.
And that came up. The Eastern Front came up and Icebreaker came up, so they Suvorov talks about how a lot of the soldiers, Russian soldiers that were killed right there, they had they had Russian to German dictionaries in their pockets. Most of the tanks that were on the Eastern Front that the National Socialists engaged first weren't made for driving on terrain. They were made for driving on roads, and all of this circumstantial evidence that goes to show that they were planning an invasion to go in, drive on roads, and then, well, why do you have Russian to German and German to Russian dictionaries so that you can talk to the people, because you're expecting to basically take over a continent. So start the takeover of a continent. So, and if you study the Spanish Civil War, I mean, you understand that the first foreign country that joined in the fight was the Soviet Union, because they wanted to be
And they
at the
were our
bottom.
ally during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Like at what was it, the Tehran conference or Yalta or one of those places? Like they're all,
Yalta.
yeah, they have FDR and Stalin. They're all hanging out together.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's just it's interesting when you find out. It's like, oh, well, why was there such a mass casualty event like immediately upon Barbarossa kicking off? Well, the Soviets had already lined up, ready to march through Poland and go into Germany.
And from a meta view, the two systems at war are National Socialism and international communism.
Mhm.
So I think that's just the bankers running experiments and seeing what tests out, what's successful.
An icebreaker refers to what how Stalin referred to Nazi Germany. He said, if we can get Nazi Germany to kick off war at all in Europe, it will be such a destabilizing force. We'll be able to go in there and start the you know, start internationalism and start looking to bring the revolution to the rest of the world. They wanted that peninsula. I mean, there's no reason to be a part of the Spanish Civil War unless you want to control the bottom of the bottom of the peninsula and Gibraltar. More
Most
importantly.
people most people don't know anything about the Spanish Civil War. Can you give a brief summary? When did it happen? What were the factions? Who won out? Who had to leave and flee the country? What happened?
Well, it started in 1936, but it always starts earlier. I've done episodes where I've started in the year 711 to explain how the Spanish Civil War started, but we won't do that here. It just Spain, much like a lot of countries, sought to join the become a democracy after a decade, after centuries of being a monarchy. And the decentralized nature of Spain, where you had autonomous regions and you had students of Bakunin coming into Spain in the 1860s and 1870s.
So Bakunin was part of the Bolshevik Revolution?
Bakunin wasn't part of the Bolshevik Revolution. He actually did not was not a fan of, he had a lot of problems with what he saw as the growing, what would become Bolshevism.
That was Mikhail Bakunin?
Yeah.
All right.
So
I gotta refresh my memory on his history.
Yeah. So he, some of his, one of his students goes there and starts preaching,
Oh, dude, I know him. Anarcho-communism.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got him over here. So, all right, just so I can get a track on where you're going with that. All right. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
But the what you see as what Bakunin was not a fan of Marx. He took his inspiration from Marx, but he also saw that there were flaws. There were flaws in the approach that was happening. Either way, his students went to Spain, started radicalizing them there. You had there were three Carlist wars, which were wars to try to keep the Catholic Church in power in the 1800s. First one they lost, second one they lost, third one draw, basically. So basically, Spain is not there were so many autonomous regions that it was hard for them to be cohesive. So there were plenty of factions when you start getting up to the 20th century, and you have World War I, which basically says monarchies are not allowed to exist anymore. We have to, we have to have this world order.
Unless you're the British, then you're allowed to have a monarchy still, but you can get rid of your cousins because they compete against you.
Right. Yeah. So Spain through the 20s is having all sorts of financial issues. The Depression, the stock market crash affects the world, and people are more apt to vote for hard leftist people who are promising, saying that the old order is over, and people reacted to that. And basically, what happens in 1936? You get an election, and the election is the person who's elected, Azania. That's the Time magazine back there for the beginning of the Spanish Civil War. It has President Azania standing like this, and it has Mola and Franco underneath. He gets elected, and basically now you realize that, well, this isn't, he's calling himself a Republican. Republicans are good, right? They're for limited government and free markets. And well, no, these guys are radical leftists. And there's anarchists that they're willing to put up with. And there are communists who they are willing to side with. And immediately upon the election in 1936, you realize, oh, in the past 3 years, the churches that they've been blowing up and the priests that they've been killing, oh, this is going to happen on a mass scale. Well, once rightist, more on factions on the right within the country figure out what's going on, you have factions like the Carlists who are leftover, the Catholics. You have the Falange, which are closer to National Socialists. They would be considered to be fascists, third positionists. And you have the military, the army, the people like Franco, who was a hardcore Catholic and hardcore right winger. And they just all come together and decide, we're going to put aside our differences and we're going to fight these guys. We're going to fight these guys. And in the first 6 months of the Spanish Civil War, you figure out exactly what what the communist thought basically takes over right away, because Stalin sends people in there, sends advisors in there. And so in the first 6 months, you get 4,000 priests, nuns, and seminarians murdered. You have over 250 churches that are burned in like the first 2 months. And, this is a Catholic country. This has been a Catholic country since 500 AD, 400 AD. And people are like, okay, well, we know where this is going. Came out much later that their plans were basically to murder half the country. They figured if we murder half the country, the rest of the country will fall in line. And we have to concentrate on the Catholics because obviously the Catholics have something to rally around. And Franco, along with the Carlists and along with the Falange, and not as many foreign volunteers as the left got, because we all know George Orwell and Ernest Hemingway, go there to fight on the Republican side, the good side. They come together and decide, well, if we don't do this, we're going to lose our civilization. And the war arguments could be made. They shouldn't have marched on Madrid. They shouldn't have made Madrid such a big deal that extended the war out. But you don't know how wars are going to happen when you're in a peninsula in a tight place, and you have Russia sending tanks. Eventually, Italy gets involved. Romania sends people. Then the Condor Legion from Germany shows up, and you basically have a world war. And that's why I call it World War I.5. And basically, it was a testing ground for communist uprising, but it was also a testing ground for how are we going to fight communism. And I think that's what, going back to Icebreaker, I think that's what informed the National Socialists as to what they were dealing with, because they saw exactly what the communists were prepared to do on the European peninsula. And, in the end, Franco won. I don't think it's arguable whether he would have won without Germany's help, because their air force was a huge reversal in a lot of losses in the beginning. And I see the reason I study the Spanish Civil War so much, and I wish I knew more, that I had more memorized, more names and places. And I mean, I know some of the battles and some of the names involved, but one of the main reasons I study the Spanish Civil War is because I see very closely that a lot of the ideology that's surrounding the Spanish Civil War and a lot of the attitude and the background on both sides as stressors here. That there has been a very anti-Christian strain, especially I'll say since World War II, but I would say more since the late 1900s, since the late 1800s, and also there is just a radical left that seeks to destroy anything that has anything to do with historic civilization, and it seems like that's going to be the battles that we'll be fighting for a long time now.
Well, since World War II, they had the World Council of Churches that the Dulles brothers were involved in. So that's a globalist entity that went to kind of erode and control and use those places as forms of control, like they did through COVID. They're enforcers. And so they kind of co-opted them after World War II. What did you want to say, Scott?
Sorry, I was muted. So, Pete, did I hear you say that that in the beginning there were some people who were kind of disaffected under the nationalists, kind of the right conservative side, and kind of joined forces with the left, like communist people? Is that what I heard you say? That then moved to take power? Is that what I heard you say?
No, there were factions on both sides. Okay. So on the left, you had the basically straight up communists, and then you had Republicans who called themselves Republicans, but they were just really hard leftists.
Yeah.
Then you had the anarchists who, after a time, of course, anarchists don't want to join any kind of movement, so they decided, okay, we're going to join, and it's probably it's probably a good idea that the anarchists did join, because their disunity and their quickness to kill anyone, even the people they were fighting side by side with, is one of the main reasons why they lost the war, is because
they downstreamed them. Like, they went to their conclusion. It's like it's like if Ben Gurion had said from the get-go that they were going to do ethnic cleansing and remove those people. Oh wait, he did. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Please continue.
Well, I was kind of just making the observation. I mean, we made the joke at the beginning of the episode that it's like,
oh, we lost your audio.
Can't hear you.
Not into any of that stuff, but like, you know, I would be probably considered like far right extremist by, you know, certain people, whatever. But it's like now I'm like a Democrat now, like with the Epstein thing. Like, I'm like out, dude. With the Israel position, like I'm aligned with like the left on so many things these days. And so are we at that stage now where they're coalescing everybody on that side to cause the uprising, much like you were describing? Like, I don't know. I couldn't help but recognize that. What we were just talking about and what you were sharing.
Well, I think you can hold on to your ethics and hold on to your beliefs and still look at the other side and not interrupt them while they're fighting your enemy. You know,
that's what Napoleon said. Never interrupt your enemy in the middle of making a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to counter signal anyone that's fighting against Israel right now. Because, I mean, I don't want Israel to be destroyed. Yeah, I came to this conclusion. I want Israel to exist. I want them to exist as a globo homo. I want all of Israel, including their government, to be a reflection of Tel Aviv, the gayest city on the planet. I want them to be like a typical European, total Democrat shit lib country that doesn't want to fight with their enemies anymore, that doesn't want to get in, you know, that is not begging us for. I want them to be like everybody else. The way they're set up right now is an anachronism. I mean, there's no reason that a country like that should exist, especially one that people call that's the closest thing to a Western country in the Middle East. I'm like, really? And then you'll see people on Twitter, you'll see Israelis go, do you know that Israel is the only place that tolerates homosexuality in the Middle East? And I'm like, is that a flex? Are you telling me being pillow biters means that that means you're free? I don't know. We've tried that here for like 75 years, and it seems like ever since we allowed people to come out of the closet and come out of the shadows and not keep their stuff to themselves, things have gone really downhill. So yeah, sorry, people. I understand degeneracy is going to exist throughout time. Back in the closet. Yeah.
Well, they also protect pedophiles. If you're a Jewish American citizen and you're under investigation, you can flee to Israel, including Jeffrey Epstein was able to do that.
The director
extradite.
Yeah, the director Brett Ratner of like Rush Hour fame lives in Israel right now because he was accused of sexually assaulting actresses and on set and everything like that, and they hide him. And I mean, that just doesn't, if we had Americans who went overseas and, decided to live in, wherever, Brazil, and, they started raping women, and then they came back here, I mean, we bury them under the jail. We don't say, well, we're not going to allow the Goyim to, put our people on trial. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, it's infuriating, but we have to get past this. And I think that as you see, October 7th, after October 7th, I predicted, and I don't think that this was a great prediction on my part. I don't think I was being Nostradamus or anything. I said, after I saw the reaction to October 7th by Israel, I said, that's it. They're being able to hide behind Hasbro propaganda is going to start to fall apart. And I think it started falling apart very quickly, and it's falling apart more and more every day. I saw Jonathan Greenblatt from the ADL the other day say that, was it 4 years ago, they did a worldwide survey, and like 25% of people had and he wasn't talking about Zionists, he's only talking about Jews. He said they had a poor or a suspicious attitude towards Jews, and now it's at 47%. It's like, you did this to yourself. You started a war of genocide, and then when people started talking about it, you started trying to pass laws in foreign countries. Oh, like you've already done in 17 countries in Europe, where you can't deny it, you can't question a certain event. And people aren't going to figure that out, especially in the information age. And when I say information age, I'm talking about where people are debunking things in real time as it's hitting the news. You didn't think that this was a bad idea? You didn't think people were going to, I mean, you start a Telegram channel pops up showing all of Israel's atrocities. And then when it's investigated, it comes out that Unit 8200 is posting Israel's atrocities on purpose. Okay, why? Why would you do this? It almost seems like they're suicidal at this point. And why would you do this to your... You would think you'd want to hide what you were doing, but it's impossible now. So I think Israel as the entity, how it has operated for 77 years now, is done. I think you're going to see something new happen. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but eventually and I'm not talking about either 20, 25 years. It just seems like if they want to survive, they're going to have to change. The only thing that scares me is that, from listening to some of the people in their government, Netanyahu's not even a hardliner. When you see some of these when you hear interviews with some of these settlers, these people, I don't even know why Netanyahu would want them in the country. I mean, I'd have expelled them by now. These people are friggin' nuts. It's like, I don't know what they're doing, but I hope whatever this experiment that they've had for 77 years comes to an end, and that it comes to an end where people want to go there and live there, and it'd be a nice, peaceful place where they're not having to worry about rockets being shot from Gaza or the West Bank, and they can just live their lives in peace. That's what I think.
Since 10/7, Israel has been a victim of the Streisand effect, which is ironic, as if they don't know Barbara Streisand's work, doesn't celebrate her entire catalog. The other aspect was Teddy Roosevelt had a quote back in the day about, like, any country that depends on foreign aid to exist shouldn't exist. And we give Israel billions of dollars every year, allegedly. I don't know. I didn't bean count it myself, but that's the number thrown around. But also, I want to observe that it's a country founded by two countries' international banking family, the British and the French Rothschilds. And that's the same banking family that created the Federal Reserve, to which we pay $1 trillion a year in interest because of the IRS Federal Reserve situation. So when we're giving $1 trillion to the same group of people who own the country that has the stolen nuclear weapons from our country, I don't know. I don't see it the same way that some other people see it, I guess. I know too much.
Well, let's not forget the City of London, TM City of London, not
that's right.
London, but the City of London.
Can you explain that aspect? Because that's very confusing for people, and it even bounced off me the first couple of years. I was like, what do you mean, the City of London, the City of New York? And it's like, no, there's a city inside the City of London called the City of London, and it's a banker city. It has these gargoyles at the gates and all sorts of stuff. When did you first learn about that?
About a year and a half ago, came upon a no, it was shared with me an
Was it Empire of the City? The book
article.
that
No, it
was
was an
made
article from
okay.
UNS that was on UNS, and it was just basically called the City of London. The gentleman who wrote it had a Russian name. I think it was probably a nom de plume, and he just explains that it's like this money laundering factory, and he has no evidence, but he thinks that that's where a lot of human trafficking could go through too. It's this 1 square mile part of London, in the middle of London, which the prince, the king, well, now he's the king, has to ask permission to go into. He doesn't even have permission to go into it. And it's basically all the banks are there. And it operates on its own.
That's where Lloyd's of London is. So there's I've been to the City of London, and I did some work there when I worked in corporate world, and I had no idea what it was until afterwards. I'm like, oh yeah, that is an interesting area, and it is like only banks, and MI6 was made by City of London bankers, and then CIA and OSS was made by Wall Street lawyers. So there's like a whole history there, and they got a little. It's like Vatican City, but it's in London. Like they got their own little city state inside the city.
You can't take pictures you can't take pictures in there. People get stopped all the time from taking pictures, and it's very, very secretive. You can go in, but it's very secretive of what's happening there. And basically, it is the center. I mean, it really came onto my Tom Luongo really started talking about it, and started talking about just the gold reserves there. And that's what really brought me into it was, with Jerome Powell's war basically on the City of London that he's been waging, that's how I really started to understand what was happening there. And, then you find out that, all the gold is flowing into this country, and London and the City of London is like freaking out. And then you see Javier Milei, just, this libertarian anarcho-capitalist darling, take all of this gold and ship it to the City of London. And they're like, well, why? It's like, well, to hold it there. Well, no, the City of London needs backing in order so that they can keep lending out money. Even though you're dealing with a fractional reserve system, there has to be something there. And once you figure out the City of London and how tied to the Federal Reserve it is, and then Jerome Powell comes in there and goes, this ends right now. Oh, and by the way, LIBOR, bye-bye. No more LIBOR. Now we have SOFR. We're going to make our own interest rates. And London, the City of London, freaked out. And you see it now. I honestly believe that if Powell hadn't gone to war with them and weakened them as much as they have, the Ukraine war would just be, they'd be pouring money into Ukraine, and they can't pour as much money. Yeah. They can't pour as much money into Ukraine because they don't have it. Yeah. And it's because of what Powell did. I was reading something a couple months ago where they were talking about the amount of physical gold that was coming into New York. They were just like, they couldn't. Remember when we've had that gold spike, which has been really nice, and you're like, oh, why is it gold spike? Oh, all the gold is coming here. Oh, why is it coming here? Because there was a run on it in the City of London, and people are like, well, and it's taking 2 months for people to get gold. And they're like, well, now that I have my gold back, it's not going back to the City of London. We're going to New York. Why'd that happen? So, I mean, if the City of London, here's another thing to take into consideration. If the City of London is basically hemorrhaging liquidity, how does Israel continue to survive?
Yeah, they are connected.
Yeah.
The British Israel World Federation.
It's the Rothschild. The City of London is the Rothschilds.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so I got this for you because this book might not be on your radar, but if you want it, I'll send it to you because I have a copy. It's called Empire of the City: The Secret History of British Financial Power by E.C. Knuth or Knuth, if you're into that type of pronunciation. The author presents a behind the scenes look at the secretive international policies of the British government and how their successes allowed them to rise to the top of a vast secret order of world finance. According to the author, he has pieced enough information together presented in his book, which clearly shows the colossal financial and political organization is run from an area called the City of London. Due to its
Hmm.
power, the city is claimed to operate as a super government of the world and plays some kind of role and has influence in virtually every world event. So it's 112 pages, published in 1946, Pete. This is
Oh,
not
if I
like Johnny
can,
come lately,
uh,
conspiracy type theory. He was writing back in 1946 about this. That's right after World War II, where you're noticing such things going on. So I can make a note here, and I think I have your current address. So I'll send
yeah, if
you.
you have, yeah, I mean, even if you have a PDF, I mean, 112 pages, I can do PDF in probably 100, like 4 hours.
Oh.
But yeah, if you want to send me that, that'd be great. I'll send you my address offline. But
Charlie, have you heard of the City of London?
Yeah, I've actually been there. I was on one of the double-decker buses. I'd been on an all-night flight and I fell asleep on the top of the one of the buses on a sunny afternoon. And I woke up and I looked around and I noticed that all of the architecture and all the art around it, the sculptures had changed. And I knew just by looking at it that I was in the city of London because everything turned into dragons. There's a
Yes.
lot of
There's
dragon
dragons that
symbology
guard.
going on there,
Yeah.
it's
guarding the
wild.
gold.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily help their case for not being lizard people either. You see a lot of that. When I did the Tower of London tour, I was looking at their coat of armor and, it had a
Yeah, they
big
have a
lizard
torture
on top. I'm
museum
like,
over there. They have a whole, centuries of torture devices that was really like
yeah,
just disturbing. Yeah.
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 Yeah,
All
Uh,
right.
so I
so
mean, with the city of London becoming so weak, I mean, is this that's a real strain on Israel.
Yeah.
So I think they're having. That's why Netanyahu is continually coming to the United States is to beg for money and beg for support. And he's going to get it because you know this. I mean, come on, we've been occupied for a long time. Yeah, back in the '80s, if you said Zionist occupied government, you could get the FBI knocking on your door. Now everybody's saying it. I mean, grandmas are saying it. I'm hearing people are contacting me going, yeah, I would try to talk to my mom about Zionist occupied government like 20 years ago. Now she's calling me and asking me, did you see that guy, Daryl Cooper, talking to Tucker Carlson the other night? What's going on with Israel?
What's going on in Israel? Have you been following the Ireland situation at all?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the wave of immigration that has
Well,
overwhelmed it in a very short period of time, yeah.
well, there's that. Well, I mean, that could contribute to the fact that apparently it's the most, they're quote unquote now the most.
Oh, we lost your audio again.
What I heard right before coming on air was that there's like this effort to form like an APAC type thing in Ireland that's getting a lot of resistance. And I think the one they're referring to is the Ireland-Israel Alliance. Because what's happening is Israel is trying to pass this bill called the Occupied Territories Bill, which basically institutes a boycott on any goods that come from the occupied territories in the Israel, not Israel itself, but like from Jerusalem, the West Bank, things that they consider to be occupied territory. So it's like a boycott on any goods or services as a state, as a policy of the government of Ireland. And so Israel's kind of freaking out about that precedent being set by like a Western country. So I just heard about it and I was just curious if you'd come across that at all. It's really interesting.
Well, I mean, this isn't surprising. I mean, elite Jewish power has been upset with Ireland since they sat out World War II. I mean, they still talk about that. It's been a bone of contention the whole time. You will still hear some Americans will be like, yeah, while we were over there fighting the Nazis, Ireland was just sitting back, and it's like, okay, well, I mean, what they've never been colonizers, quote unquote. They've always just been this island, this Catholic island. You know, I mean, I know there's a lot of Protestants up north, but we're not talking about north. And they've just really wanted to be left alone for the most part. And yeah, this doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, even if you start investigating the NGOs that started this whole immigration into Ireland thing, you start to see a pattern emerge. I talked to Irish activists who about the immigration issue there, and they're pretty well educated on where a lot of the impetus for it and where it comes from.
There was never any colonization in Palestine that ever happened, right? Because they're not colonizers. Isn't that the claim? They're not.
Well, I mean, I think you could look at Islam and you could say that Islam is a conquering religion. But, if they're a conquering religion, okay, well, we've had colonization efforts from the Anglosphere that wasn't based upon religion. Is it the problem that it was based around religion? I mean, my ancestors were overrun by Muslims for 750 years before they turned around and kicked them out. I hold no hard feelings towards the Muslims for doing that. I maybe hold a little hard feelings for the ones who facilitated it, but I understand conquering, and I think a lot of people just look at Islam today, and we've had so much propaganda shoved down our throats since 9/11, and then it just so happens that most of the mental institutions and prisons that have been emptied out in Africa and the Middle East that have flooded into Europe happen to be Muslim. So, my question is, you always have to ask how they got there, and then you can look up names like Barbara Lerner Specter, and you can figure out how that happened.
We had a lot of propaganda against Muslims starting like in the 1970s in Hollywood films, all the way up through, True Lies with Schwarzenegger and, all the other typical, the Arabs are bad, they're the terrorists. Really, when you start your country by bombing the King David Hotel, like maybe they're casting what they're doing on another group as like a self-defense mechanism. I'm not sure. Camouflage? Human shields. That's what it is. It's like human shields. Yeah.
Demonizing the Italians and making them the only mafia that exists out there. Definitely not the Jewish mafia.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the argument can be made that the diaspora from the Pale Settlement in the late 1800s really gained their wealth through prohibition. It's amazing to me that The Godfather is one of my favorite movies. Godfather 1, Godfather 2, my favorite movie. Goodfellas, love them. But let's not fool ourselves into thinking that it's the Italian mob. There's another group in there.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because when I read through, like I have all these Rothschild biographies, autobiographies, and there's Baron Philippe, and it doesn't matter which other Baron. There's two specific autobiographies that I read, and when they tell their family story history, it's about loan sharking, hijacking, selling stolen goods. It's like
Liquor.
The Godfather. Yeah, it's like The Godfather on the way that Corleone comes up, but their stories about their family lineage are straight up like, yeah, they're basically gangsters.
Well, I'm reading.
You're not supposed to talk about them.
Yeah, I have a Russian scholar friend of mine, Dr. Matthew Raphael Johnson, and on my show, we're on episode 55 of reading through Alexander Solzhenitsyn's 200 Years Together. And you find out that they controlled the liquor trade. They owned inns. And when you find out when inns also means prostitution, yeah, that's what they did in Russia. I mean, and it seems to follow a pattern because it followed here too.
Isn't there a historical pattern though of the Khazars, or the Khazars, if you want to call them that, not to
Mhm.
be not to be confused with the Khosars written about by Donald Barr in that creepy book right before he hired Epstein. Anyway, people from like France and Britain, they're going across to the Holy Land, and they were being provided inns, various hospitality type along the way, and they would get their stuff jacked and people assume their identities. There was this whole lineage of history around that, and that area adopted Judaism as a religion, like an operating system for those people, but it wasn't necessarily that they were related back to the 12 tribes of Israel. So anyway, there's a whole storyline around that.
Dr. Shlomo Sand
Yeah,
wrote a
invention
book
of the
called
Jewish people.
Invention of Jewish People. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's his theory. His theory is that most Jews that are considered to be Ashkenazis are really closer to a Turkic tribe that had, and they actually in the article on UNS about the city of London, they talk about how the city of London was actually settled in 1050, 1060 by Khazarians. So that's how long it's been there, that it's been controlled by one group of people. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Are there other source materials where one could learn about such things?
I'd have to go to I mean, he has detailed he has detailed footnotes in there. So
that's about as long as Oxford has been around. And Oxford, I think, is built on a Mithraic, like they have like bull sacrifice bones or something there. A lot of the Bank of England, a lot of those places are built on Mithraic ritual sites. So now we get back to like ritual sacrifice, which has also been a theme. Oh, I just spilled something. Cover me, Scott. I got to go fix my spill. I should have put a lid on it. I should have put a lid on it.
Yeah, you got to put a lid on it, dude. Yep. And then
you don't have to think about it, dude.
You got to put a lid on it.
Yeah. See, I have a separate side table that I put my drinks on, so if I do spill, it doesn't hit the table here. Because I had that issue. I spilled water on my current laptop, and now it only works if it's plugged in. And there's a brand new MacBook Pro that I bought, and I was like, and now it's like sucks. So
yeah, I actually got an iMac, and that's what I'm actually using the camera on the iMac. So just to reduce space, I wanted to reduce clutter. I got my Rodecaster. I got my arm here that I can move completely against the wall. I wanted space.
That's good. What is your setup? What do you got?
Just a Rode mic or a Rodecaster.
Okay. Charlie,
Yeah,
what's your setup there?
Same thing.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. You can't, I mean, Rodecaster is just the best. I mean, you recording a local track that sounds, like you're in a studio, and, there's not much you can do for your host, but, if you have StreamYard or something, you can record the local track that uploads from their side. And that's about as best as you can hope for, unless they have a Rodecaster on their side and they record their local track and they send it to you.
There you go.
Then you could be of good quality. But yeah, podcasting. What my first 150 episodes sounded like dog crap, and then I finally decided it needs to sound better.
I have a couple questions for you. So you mentioned UNS.com, UNZ.com. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I've heard other people mention it. It's if you guys want to dive deep, the things they don't want you to know about.
Oh, you'll be here. Here's where to start on UNS.com. Go to UNS.com and type in American Pravda. It's a series that Ron has been doing now for, I want to say, 6 years. And he is just basically looking at, I mean, obviously it's called American Pravda. He's looking at all the propaganda. He has a extensive research in there on various groups of power. Ron does get a pass when he studies Jewish power, being Jewish. So he gets a pass on talking about it, even though they will still call you an anti-Semite if you're Jewish and you talk about Jewish power. But his if you just go there, and it is a repository for. There are old Rothbard Rockwell reports on there. There are old copies of social justice on there. I mean, you're talking about he has scanned stuff on there. There's whole books on there that you can't find anywhere. Israel Shahak's Jewish History, Jewish Religion is on there. That's where I found that book, which has become vital to a lot of the research I've done. I found a print copy that is completely marked through, and I read the whole thing on my podcast while I was commenting on it. Unz is just, his American Pravda series is probably some of the best research I've ever seen into one specific through line in American political power. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been there a few times, but it's something I should check in on. Like right at the top, an article by Andrew Anglin.
Yes.
Guy. So okay, that kind of gives you an idea what the flavor is there. So.
Oh, and he has. I think Ray Dalio's has stuff on there. I think that, I mean, it's just a place where if you write good articles, he'll publish you. And Ron he created a software back in the 90s that I think he sold to the New York Stock Exchange. So he's had fuck you money for the longest time, and he just doesn't care. Yeah.
Awesome. I wanted to ask you too, while we have you here. So you're known for doing these, reading controversial books on your show, doing commentary. What would you say is your favorite? In either the sense that it's the most controversial or just what's been your favorite? And then maybe what has been the most controversial in your opinion, maybe the most people freaking out about, I guess.
My favorite was, the first one I ever read was, I read Kaczynski's manifesto.
I think I remember.
But that's not my favorite. My favorite, the one that really got a lot of eyes on me, and even Daryl Cooper in his series that he did on his show, the history of Jewish and black relations in the United States, he shouted out this series. There's a book by Harold Saltzman from the 70s called Race War in High School.
That's what I was going to ask you about, dude. I listened to that whole thing that you did. That was very good.
It is
something.
It is in the first chapter, you have a teacher being set on fire. I mean, and it just goes from there. So it just basically talks about how this forced integration, you took Franklin K. Lane High School, a high school that John Gotti went to, actually. You had a bunch of people, famous people who went to this high school. And then in the 60s, it went from 75% white in like 1963 to 55%, 60% black 4 years later. And it just became a war zone. Students ODing, in school, teachers being beaten, teachers being raped. And when I picked up the book, and it's pretty expensive, a buddy of mine found a copy for me and gifted it to me. I mean, one of the nicest people I know. It's hard to find now, the original hardcover. But there was another aspect to the book that I wasn't expecting when I started reading it. It talks about the teachers union, the UFT, the biggest union in the country at the time. And what wasn't told you is that they had 60,000 members. And I know I can say this on here because it's not controversial. Those 60,000 members in 1968, 2/3 of them were Jewish. So 2/3 of the teachers in the New York City public school system were Jewish. The union is basically what the book, and the person who wrote this book is Jewish, Harold Saltzman. And what he describes to you is another Jewish mafia basically taking over the union, centralizing power and all of the wealth to themselves, and leaving these schools to themselves to just basically burn down. And that's when I read this book and I got to the end, I was like, oh, that's why we're here. Oh, that's how. Well, I mean, we got here because of Shelley v. Kramer and Brown versus Board of Education and the Civil Rights Act and all sorts of things. Yeah, no longer having freedom of association. But yeah, it was, this book just shocked the hell out of me. But the book that I'm reading now is probably going to be a legacy type book. It's probably going to be 150 episodes of reading Solzhenitsyn, because this book hasn't even been officially translated into English. And I'm scared that when they translate it into English, they're going to destroy it. They're going to either take parts out or they're going to footnote it to death. Say that's not, even though it is one of the most footnoted books I've ever read. And most of the footnotes are either from the Jewish Encyclopedia, the Small Jewish Encyclopedia, or Sliasberg, who was a Russian Jewish scholar who lived at the time of from the late 1800s up through the Revolution. And so most of the footnotes he's using firsthand Jewish sources, much like Werner Sombart used for the Jews and the Economic Life, his history of economics for the last 300 years that he wrote in 1911, which just basically used a Jewish encyclopedia. and was, when it was translated from German into English, I have a first edition German over there, and I've started translating it actually because there are parts that were taken out in the translation. It was translated by a Talmudic scholar because they saw it as, we need to show just exactly how powerful and what our people have built. And I have a paperback version that was used in college classrooms with the editor having like 3/4 of the book as editor's notes from a college classroom. And I haven't read that one on my show yet, but we've talked about it for possibly something in the future, because it'll just show you where basically our economic system and how everything from like the convenience store to fractional reserve banking, where it comes from and the history of it, and basically people telling you exactly how they did it.
Well, I myself have used the Jewish Encyclopedia Judaica, it's also called, as a reference in my ongoing Rothschild multi-book process of, I'm still writing it. Don't ask when it's going to be done. But anyway, David Sassoon, like if you went to the Encyclopedia Judaica and you researched David Sassoon, the opium warlord of Baghdad, you'd see a lot of interesting things. And then you'd see his progeny, who eventually married into the Rothschilds by the 1860s. So you had a marriage of the banking power with the opium magnate during the time of the East India Company, subjugating China and setting up a new world order and preparing to get rid of all the other monarchies so that they can amalgamate all the places into one. And you can't do that unless you have mass migration, making the nation states not so willing to defend themselves anymore.
Or not having an identity. It helps when you have an identity, but nobody else does.
Well, it's an untouchable identity.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's untouchable, but also if you've deracinated every other historically warlike identity, it's easier for you to have power and keep it, especially if you force upon, much like the book Adorno's Authoritarian Personality says, we have to destroy the family. We have to, let's give them eros. Let's give them pornography, and let's give them, let's destroy their minds. Let's destroy their families.
Well, I think that's a thing that they like to do to us, not themselves. Because if you look at like Mustafa in Brave New World, or O'Brien in 1984, those guys have access to art and history and culture and music and all the things that they deny to the people who they enslave. And so that type of censorship or bifurcation of society to separate it artificially, I think is a strategy that we could catch on to. And once we catch on to it, it doesn't work so well anymore. Just like the claims of, anti-Semitism when you criticize Zionism as a colonizing force that always has been intentionally colonizing a place that they didn't have. So the British talked about it in 1841 with Lord Shaftesbury's declaration to restore the Jews to Palestine. And there's a whole bunch of other proto-colonization efforts that go on 100 years plus before the creation of Israel. But if you just read it from a high school textbook, Tiny Mustache Man did some things, and therefore these people need to be protected in this nation state. I think that what I think it was Gavin McInnes was in a debate a couple weeks ago. He referred to it as Jews in name only. People who aren't religious, they're not Orthodox, they're not Shabbat or Lubavitch, right? They just Jews in name only. They use people of a religious persuasion and their religious texts as human shields to move forth an agenda that always has been in Ben-Gurion's diary entries, a knowledge of, at the least, ethnic cleansing, removing these people never to come back. And if they have to kill them to get them out of the way, that's always been part of the plan as well. Even if they have to kill some people of their own to get their own country, that was part of the plan itself. And they aligned it many times throughout the 1930s with Hitler and had the transfer agreement and, all the other things that were going on because there were some synergies between their goals, right? And they would be sacrificing some religious Orthodox Jews who wouldn't kibbutz over in Palestine. And they wanted the, hardworking, sturdy Europeans to move to Israel to form the new IDF army and protect the nation state.
Well, anyone who's read Maurice Samuel's You Gentiles from, I think it was 1922 understands, it's one of the most infuriating books you'll ever read. Listening to somebody who calls himself an atheist Jew invoke God and the Bible for basically his bigotry towards Gentiles it's hard to read because you're just like, okay, I just want you to have a little bit of consistency here. I understand that most people can't be 100% consistent because it's just not in our nature. We have emotions and there's too many variables, but I just want a little consistency here. You can't call yourself an atheist and then invoke God and say the reason why we're going to dominate you and we can never get along is because we love God more than you do. And then you say, but God doesn't exist. And it's just like, how am I supposed to argue with you? I can't. What's our foundation to argue? You make no sense. You are contradicting yourself over and over again. And maybe the reason why we can't get along is because of that, because you're contradicting yourself and your hatred of me has no basis. And, it's always that thing of, accuse your enemy of what you're guilty of. They always say, oh, if you're accusing Jews of anything, it's because you're jealous of them or you just hate them. And as Leo Pinsker said, it's hereditary. It's been handed down for 2,000 years. Or, Levinas saying that, it's a disease, it's incurable. Well, okay, but we're historically, it's Europeans and white Europeans who just really want to get along with everybody. Sure, we're going to take over a land every once in a while, and probably some stuff's going to happen. But eventually, we're going to build it back up. We're going to build it up, and you'll be a part of it. And we're not going to destroy. We're not going to seek to destroy what you are. We didn't tell the American Indians that they couldn't stop practicing whatever beliefs they had or anything like that. They said you can't live here. You got to live over there. I think it's actually worse when you tell people, oh, you can live and you can still live where you are, but you can't continue to believe what you want to believe. You can't believe what you want to believe. You have to. We're going to have a social engineering experiment. We're going to have a social engineering regime means that you can't be German anymore. You can't be French anymore. You can't be English anymore. You can't be American anymore. You can't be Spanish anymore. But we're going to remain who we are, and we're going to be as tight as ever. Well, you're sounding like somebody that I should consider to be an enemy.
Yeah. Oh, you're muted, Rich.
Mute. Richard, you're muted.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
you
I got it. My mouse was all the way over here on this screen. I had to walk it back across to undo it. But I think that's happened many times throughout history. And it's going to continue to repeat until people start to notice the patterns. And they can't notice the patterns if they're just watching whatever's being put out by the pattern makers. They got to look at what's transgressed. I almost knocked the cup off again. Through history. I almost did it again. Whew. I used to have a table there, but I'm not fully moved into this studio yet. And I just found out something I need to improve there. So as far as what we were like, I heard Gavin McGinnis use the term Jews in name only, but that would be atheist Jews. Now, what does that mean? Atheist is a person who doesn't believe in God. I respect that. You don't have to believe, you have a right to believe whatever you want. But then claiming that you're the chosen people of God while you're also not believing in God, that's what atheist Jew means, right? So that term right there, that was all the leaders of Zionism. They weren't orthodox. They weren't followers of the scroll. They weren't going to become rabbis and these sort of things, right? The father of utopian socialism, Moses Hess, who developed this whole idea of taking Palestine in 1861. We're going to do it, and we're going to infiltrate these secret societies, and here's how we took over Freemasonic lodges in Europe to do it. I mean, he's not somebody who I would say is religious, but I think he's fanatical. I think he's like one of the earlier communists. Father of utopian socialism is not people who are self-reliant, producing, having their own private property and trading freely among themselves without coercion. They have this other idea. Utopia means not here, literally not here. Nowhere. It doesn't exist. It's too good to be true. Stop trying to make it happen.
Well,
but they kill a lot of people trying to do it.
Yeah. Daryl Cooper came on my show last week, and we did an episode. We did an hour and a half on the historic JQ, Jewish question. And, we did it from a very scholarly look. It started out as something that I can't remember what the guy's name was, that Marx was basically Jews were being released from the shtetls and rabbinical power by countries becoming more democratic and becoming more free in the early 1800s. And the question was, okay, so how do we help them to, well, what it quickly became was, how do we assimilate these people into Western culture? And basically what Daryl said was, he said, well, the way we're going to assimilate them into our culture is that we're going to have to stop being Christian. And they're going to have to stop being Jews. But the problem, there's a problem with that. And I immediately seized upon the problem when he said that, was, all right, when we stop being Christians, what are we then? Because when they stop being religious Jews, they're still Jews, because they still have an ethnic component to them. So we've lost the thing that helped my people stay together for 700 years and fight back the Muslim invaders in Spain. And that was Catholicism. Well, now we've basically given up our religiosity. Sure, we have Christians in this country, and there's a lot of Christians who are very serious about their faith. But much of the Christian faith has been co-opted by people like C.I. Scofield, who was financed by Samuel Untermeyer, who...
Oh, I did not know that. Can you tell me more?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Scofield Bible made it into Moody Bible College because Samuel Untermeyer had so much sway. There's a book out there called C.I. Scofield, the man and his book. I can't remember the author's name right now. It's on Amazon, and it basically goes to show that this Bible, as best as we can tell, was part of part of the Zionist, not the Bible itself. I mean, the text is fine, but there's all these notes and there's all these charts and there's all this stuff showing how basically the Jews are still God's people, and they have to be treated with respect, and the physical Israel has to be refounded, or Jesus doesn't come back.
So they came up with a plan, and then at some point they updated our, New Testament Jesus book with these notes. So I had said it's basically a Talmud for Gentiles.
Yep.
They've made commentary around the text. The text is good, but it's all the commentary that leads to this conclusion that God is like a gambling real estate tycoon who didn't have the country on him at the time. He's like, I'll pay you later, a couple thousand years later, I'll show up with a country for you guys. That's the promise, right? Allegedly through there. But then the claim is people from Europe are related to the 12 tribes of Israel. And I don't know that happens because they're not allowed to do DNA testing in Israel because they'd all find out they're from Eastern Europe.
They've stopped doing DNA testing in Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
because
like
you find out that the Palestinians had more DNA tied to the land to historic Judaism than the actual Ashkenazis that came there from Europe, and how I think with the exception of Menachem Begin, every prime minister of Israel has changed their name to sound more Middle Eastern because they all sound European. I mean, it's been a plot since the beginning.
BB from Philly. Hey, also Sammy Untermeyer. He was the handler of Colonel House, and he worked under Bernard Baruch, big supporter of Zionism. The authoritative commentary
Brandeis.
on this. Yeah,
Brandeis right there. Those two guys there.
Yeah.
Colonel House and Louis Brandeis went into the Oval Office and told Woodrow Wilson, we need to join the fight in Europe.
Yes. And against them for that fight in Europe, Charles August Lindbergh, the senator. But the story is told by Benjamin Friedman in his book Facts Are Facts, and there's also an audio that we've played here on Grand Theft World, so you could hear it on Clip Genie if you wanted to. Benjamin Friedman tells a story, and he says in Facts Are Facts that Untermeyer was the handler of Colonel House, and I think maybe even lived in the same building upstairs from where House was, and then House was handling Woodrow Wilson. So it went from Brandeis to Untermeyer to House to Woodrow Wilson. So there were 3 layers of supra government above what we called the American president. And he was a tycoon who was at the Versailles Treaty. Benjamin Friedman was there during the peace conference. He was with the Zionist contingent, which is mentioned in Paris 1919 by Margaret Macmillan. There's a whole chapter here at the end on the Zionist representation at the Paris conference. And that's before the tiny mustache man. In fact, the only tiny mustache man back then was Charlie Chaplin.
Well, I'm sure you're familiar with Brandeis and Frankfurter and the Parasham, right?
No, what's that? What's a Parasham?
Oh, the Parasham. God, I'd have to pull my notes up on it. It's a Allison Weir talks about them, as a chapter about them in Against Our Better Judgment. How Jewish power convinced the United States to, basically become Zionist and advocate for the state. The Parasham was a secret organization run out of, I can't remember the name of the college. I could pull the book up right now on my computer, but it was a here, let me see.
Pete, while you're doing that, I was going to ask, have you heard of Clip Genie? Are you familiar with Clip Genie?
No.
Okay, well, this is a Grand Theft World tool. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. I'll show you here. This is just real quick.
We could search any episode.
Yeah, if you go to gtw.clipgenie.com, it's basically a search engine for the Grand Theft World archive. So I typed in Schofield Bible, and it delivers every result in every episode where we've mentioned the Schofield Bible. You can click, go right to it, and watch the episode right from that spot.
Oh, wow.
And then you can also clip it. That's why it's called Clip Genie.
Yeah, then you can
output it to social media.
That's amazing.
But Scott was the co-developer of it, and we could hook you up with it too at some point.
Yeah, it's something that myself and a developer worked on. So I think it'd be great for your show too, if you want to talk about it.
Okay, definitely.
Cool.
The Parasham was a Israeli. Brandeis used the parashum as according to Gross, Brandeis was a leader of an elitist secret society called the Parashum, the Hebrew word for Pharisees, and separate, which grew out of Harvard's Menorah Society. Brandeis used the Parashum as a private intellectual cadre, a pool of manpower for various assignments. Brandeis recruited ambitious young men, often from Harvard, to work on the Zionist cause, and then with promises of helping them further their career later. Harvard men spread out across the land. Gross reports that as the Harvard men spread out across the land in their professional pursuits, their interests in Zionism were kept alive by secretive exchanges, trappings of fraternal order. At the secret initiation ceremony, new members were told, quote, "You are about to take a step which will bind you to a single cause for all your life. You will, for 1 year, be subject to an absolute duty whose call you will be impelled to heed at any time, in any place, and at any cost. And even after, until our brotherhood shall be accomplished, you will be a fellow in the brotherhood whose bonds you will regard as greater than any other in your life, dearer than that of family, of school, and of nation." And this was the key founder and leader of the Parashum. Maybe you have this name somewhere. Horace M. Callan, who created it in 1913.
How do you spell parashum?
Parushim. And this all comes from
1913, a very interesting year.
This all comes from Sarah Schmidt's book, The Parashum. Oh no, this was an article in the American Jewish Historical Quarterly, 65th edition 65, December 1975, pages 121 through 139 by Sarah Schmidt.
And what did it translate to?
The Parashum translates to either Pharisee or separate. Yeah, separate.
All right, so I was just adding it into the history blueprint here so I can read up on that. Because that was
Weir's book is great. Weir's book is great. It's 80 pages long, and it is all meat. And there are things in there that are absolutely, I mean, she talks about this. I'm sure you know about how, like in 1948 when they were trying to found Israel, there was a huge Jewish community that had been in Iraq for 1,000 years. And they didn't want to come to Israel. They're like, no, we like it here. We love Baghdad. We're not going anywhere. And they just started setting off bombs. They not only set off bombs in synagogues there, but they set off bombs in like the U.S. Army's library that they had there. And they were these people. When you bring up Irgun, Haganah, the Stern Gang, people will be like, well, you're just making this up. And then I'll just go to the Jewish virtual library and pull it up and link it and be like, are they lying? They're bragging.
Absolutely, absolutely. Baruch also had a plan for world government in 1946. There was the Baruch plan. But Pete, if you want to hang out for a little bit longer, I'd like to watch this Nick Fuentes, Jake Shields clip. It's titled, let's see, How They Control You. I don't know who they are.
Invite me back. I got to go.
All right, dude. Have a good night. Thanks for coming in the midst of the storm. You rocked it. And let me show people.
Thank you for listening to my rantings.
Well, let me show people your tweeter first. But here we go over here. Boom, boom. Peter R.
Nope, that's not me.
No, that's not you.
That's my second account.
Okay.
There's a link in the episode description. I can pull it up right.
I was going to say because
it's at Peter R. Quinones.
I gotta get my fingers.
R.
I know.
Keep going. There you second one.
Second one. There we go.
There
we go. There we go. Okay. I was wondering why I wasn't following you on the other account. It's like follow back. I was like, of course follow back. But this is your primary account. I got you.
Okay.
And then where can people support your work other than finding you on the Twitter?
The PeteQuinonesShow.com. That's everywhere you can support. Hey, Bitcoin's up. Bitcoin's at like 120,000. Someone send me some Bitcoin, you lazy bastards. I'm just kidding. It's just someone sent
He's
me
not, but
Dash the other day.
he's putting his QR code out there for you on the page.
So somebody sent me Dash the other day, and I thank you very much. And I'm just like, Bitcoin's at 120. Send me a $5 or someone, please.
Yeah. That's right, dude. All right, support Pete Quinones show. Pete, thanks for taking time out of your busy evening for
Thank you.
educating us, because I'm pretty sure none of us, me, Charlie, and Scott, and I speak English, right? None of us knew the Civil War in Spain to that detail. So I appreciate that little tutorial. And you guys at home, you got the taste of what it's like to listen to the Pete Quinones show. He likes to read. He's a voracious reader, a big thinker, and he's got interesting guests too, like Daryl Cooper, the guy you got to whisper about because he's not to be spoken about.
I got Daryl Cooper to come on my show and do an episode on the JQ. Just think about
that. We should hook us up, man. He'd be great for this show.
Yeah, can we get an introduction?
Yeah. Warm handoff. That'd be great.
Two makers of long form content should meet like that.
Yeah, totally, dude. Richard and Daryl Cooper, dude, the long form history legends need to collaborate. It needs to happen.
7 hours will seem short.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly.
All right, gentlemen.
Pete, get some sleep, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it, man.
Take care. Bye-bye.
I've dealt with a variety of fears over the years by facilitating a growth mindset and an anti-fragile mentality. I've learned from mistakes that you haven't even conceived of yet. Now, I can't do it for you, but I can share the resources, the methods, the tools, and inspiration for you to learn how to do it for yourself. And it really is worth learning how to do for yourself because it's a lifelong beneficial skill. It's evergreen. It's never going to tarnish. You're always going to use this. If you're interested in learning more, I host a podcast every Sunday night. We analyze the week's news and help you have non-contradictory views. You actually understand, but you've got to come along for the ride and process the news with us so you have that understanding. I also teach adults twice a year in a 12-week course called Autonomy that is aimed at resolving all the problems I just pointed out with the school system and the irrational fears and the replacement of the rites of passage and the methods you need to have a skeleton key in life and a Swiss Army knife so you can have the tools and the access to do whatever you need to do in this world to bring your goals, to bring your dreams and map them to a truthful reality. It is a simple process, but it is not for those who cling to their irrational fears. So I hope if we have lowered the barrier to entry today, if you see a future you that is more realistic and in detail and something you want to strive toward, I recommend you go to getautonomy.info. Check out the offer as far as what we do for people. I want you to know it applies to you. You can learn it. I can teach it. So I want to thank you all for your time and attention. Peace. Who's going to be first off the mute this morning?
I'm glad that I have this course now more than ever. Having a community of people to discuss how to be empowered and autonomous is really necessary and also therapeutic. I'm this much scared about the virus and a lot scared of what's coming down the pipe as a result.
All right, so first off, we're going to get you away from that fear and that stress that I'm sensing. And I want to get you into the practicality of exercising the conversations you're going to need to have.
Have you found that your skills aren't matching up with the challenges ahead? Here are 19 essential skills for success that school never taught you. Get your free copy by following the link below or visit getautonomy.info/19skills.